Good evening. It is my distinct honor this evening to introduce your next speaker, Judge Carlton W. Reeves. Appointed to the U.S. Sentencing Commission in 2022, Yazoo City, Mississippi native, Judge Carlton Reeves has been serving on the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Mississippi since 2010. Prior to serving on the bench, Judge Reeves was a partner at Pygott, Reeves, Johnson & Minor for 10 years. The University of Virginia School of Law and Jackson State University, the I Love graduate, also served as chief of the Civil Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Mississippi. His state service also includes that of coveted staff attorney for the Mississippi Supreme Court and law clerk for former Mississippi Supreme Court Justice Reuben V. Anderson, the first African American to serve on the court. I consider him to be the Black Panther of the judiciary. Because he is not afraid to rattle the powers that be and advocate for radical change in prevalent issues ranging from abortion rights, mental health, and yes, the very troublesome doctrine of qualified immunity. His written orders are like power pellets, giving us the energy and encouragement we need to continue the fight for justice. He embodies courage, truth, and integrity. He's the loving family man, and I consider him a friend, confidant, and occasionally the encouraging big brother we all need. This evening, I introduce to some and present to others my friend, Judge Carlton Reeves.
Good evening, friends. Thank you. I call her Latrice. She's a friend, been a friend for a long time. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I might stray away from my written remarks from now and then because I've been listening to what's been going on, and I heard the recipient of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award, for example, talk about state constitutions and how she has them all online, and they're annotated. I bet you there's only one footnote to Mississippi's as far as an annotation goes. We're still operating under the 1890 Constitution. So there might be some other stray remarks that I might give every now and then. But I want to thank the American Constitution Society for the invitation to be here this evening. I'm so grateful to be with you all. I'm honored to be here because what unites people in this room, it is a common faith in our democracy. And this is the perfect day. This is D-Day, the day where we fought for democracy across the world. So with all that, I know we all have an understanding that our democracy is in constant need of defenders. And it is a belief that each of us has a duty to fight for that democracy, for a world where we the people means all the people, those who will fight to make our America more perfect. I know how hard it is to keep that battle up day after day, month after month, year after year, when it seems like every step forward is followed by backlash and retrenchment. I know you get discouraged. I know you become cynical. I know you start thinking better isn't possible. I know all these feelings. Why do I know these feelings? I felt them. Everyone in my Mississippi has felt them. The fight for democracy isn't new in Mississippi. We've been fighting it for it since my ancestors were brought over to build the land of the free with the hands of the enslaved. And what I've learned through the fight, seeing it up close my whole life, Annie Ellis Elementary, Betty Woodfall, Main Street Elementary, until today, my whole life haven't seen it. Not just from the perspective of a little boy there in Yazoo City, but I've seen it. It is what we come to know, what we've been fighting for is this. Democracy needs heroes. Not just those 9,400 that are buried there in Normandy, across foreign soil who fought and died for democracy. We need heroes right here. And I want to tell you all here, just like this brother did, anyone can be a hero. Even you, especially you. And so I'm here to ask each and every one of you, don't back down, don't give up, be a hero. So when you're talking about heroes, I think of Brown versus Board of Education, which we just marked its 70th anniversary. 70 years since Brown, since that decision was handed down. No, it was not a perfect decision. I'm not sure if we've ever had a perfect decision, but it still represented something true about America. It recognized our founding inspiration that all people, not just the rich, not just the powerful, not just white folk, but all people are created equal. Brown saw how the men in Philadelphia, if you will, gave a wink and a nod that they'd fallen short on that ideal. Brown recommitted us to the future that would realize America's promise. Given all those good things, all that truth, I am troubled, and so should everyone. I'm troubled about the way some people are talking about Brown today, demeaning it as extravagant, refusing to say the case was rightly decided, complaining that Brown was at odds with history and tradition, rather than admitting the faults of history and tradition. And insinuating that the acts of bravery, if taken from the bench, are nothing more than judicial overreach. There's so much foolishness with these views. I barely know where to start, but I'll start here. Just last week, the U.S. Sentencing Commission had its annual planning session. And as a part of that session, what did we do? We took a tour of the National African American Museum. Chilling, mind-boggling, painful, powerful, ghastly. So anyone who has been to that museum, or the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, or the museum over in Birmingham, the Civil Rights Institute, or even the King Museum here, or even the Civil Rights Museum in Mississippi, at odds with history and tradition. Damn right Brown is. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. What those fine gentlemen in Philadelphia, Those, again, white male property owners who declared that folk who birthed me were not whole persons, not even 3/4 of a person. See, but when I think about how people are demeaning Brown, that foolishness, as I said, I don't have to go back to the 18th and 19th century. When I think about the foolishness, when I want to see where it started, I head back to my hometown, Yazoo City, the gateway to the Delta, my hometown. So when folk in Yazoo City think about Brown versus the Board of Education and all that it stands for, they don't think about those 9 white men in those black robes. They think about somebody named Mr. Nathan Stewart, Mr. James Wright, and Miss Lottie Mae Tubbs. See, y'all don't know these names, but I do, because these are my heroes. Mr. Stewart, Mr. Wright, Miss Lottie Mae, as I call her, chose to be extraordinary because of 3 little words in that Brown too, that second Brown, all deliberate speed. That was the pace at which the Supreme Court said integration had to happen. Black folk in Mississippi knew that those in power would interpret all deliberate speed to mean never. It was up to them to make sure Brown was more than words on a piece of paper, more than just another promissory note for America to default on, as King would say many years later. Mr. Stewart, Mr. Wright, Miss Lottie Mae, and 50 other people signed a petition calling for the schools in Yazoo City to integrate. They were not esteemed judges, famous politicians, or even fancy lawyers. They were neighbors. They were fellow parents. They were friends. Mr. Stewart owned a grocery store. Mr. Wright was a plumber. And Miss Lottie Mae, she was a member of the adult choir, the senior choir at my church, St. Peter Missionary Baptist Church. See, these were ordinary folk who risked everything for the sake of their children's future, a future where we, the people, included every black girl and every black boy in my Mississippi. I signed that petition, one of them said, because I felt I was working for what? I was working for freedom. What they did was bold, it was daring, and it was an affront to the powerful. Days after the petition was signed, an angry crowd of white folk packed the auditorium in Yazoo City High School, the public high school for white kids, not Yazoo Training School, the black school for the black folk, training school because you train animals. They yelled, they stomped their feet. Let's get this thing started, they said. That came from the police chief. Let's get them niggers, said another member of the mob. The mob agreed right there and then to punish every single person who signed that petition. Employers would fire the signatories. Landlords would evict them from their homes that they did not own, that they rented. And grocers would refuse to sell them food. Merchants vowed not to sell Mr. Wright and others supplies. So if everyone stands together, they said, the niggers would regret the day that they did what they did. The mob decided to call itself, y'all are history buffs, some of you, you know, the Citizens Council, led by the so-called pillars of the community, like a prominent attorney I knew as Mr. Barber. We're going to get into the Citizen Council, Mr. Barber said, and we're going to run it right. Being run right. But what is that, being run right? Well, the council published an ad in the local paper listing the names of every person who signed the petition. Signs were placed throughout the whole city and in the countryside, in the cotton fields. That sign placed everywhere. For what? To ensure that white planters and business owners were aware of the fact of those people who signed it. They called it a public service. There is a price for bravery. Every one of the 53 signatories on that petition paid it, and so did many others. Business people like Mr. Nathan Stewart lost their supplies and their bank accounts. Tradespeople like Mr. Wright lost their customers. Folk like Miss Lottie Mae, who tried to buy groceries and were refused to service there at the grocery store. They received threatening phone calls and visits from members of the Citizen Council. The campaign of coercion and terror worked. Some of the petitioners fled town, never to return, while others withdrew their names. Shortly thereafter, the Yazoo City chapter of the NAACP was defunct. While the Citizen Council was robust, boasting of over 1,500 members in a town of 11,000 people, where 50% of them were black. 1,500 out of 6,000. I'm not talking about children. Maybe there are 1,000 children in the community. 1,500 out of 5,000. 1 in 4 people in my hometown, members of the Citizen Council. For that generation of children in Yazoo City, the dreams of an equal education died, was killed by the Citizens Council. But it would take more to integrate the schools in Yazoo City. It would take the courage of Thurgood Marshall, that founding father of the new America, who kept up the legal fight through the Legal Defense Fund. And that Legal Defense Fund would enlist the aid of local lawyers to do work for them, like Reuben Anderson and Fred Banks. It also took the courage of government officials like John Doe, who returned to the Justice Department's Power to the South, while training budding social engineers like Gordon Martin, Thelton Henderson, and Derek Bell. It would take the courage of SNCC workers and SNCC volunteers from all over the country, young people, and it would take people, home folk, like Fannie Lou Hamer, who registered voters there in Sunflower County, but who was beaten and arrested in Montgomery County. And it would take the sacrifices of people like Medgar Evers. We're nearing the 61st anniversary of his murder next week. Vernon Damer. And so many others were killed standing up for their children, standing up for democracy, so that democracy might live. But even all of that wasn't enough to make integration come to the Deep South. What it took ultimately, because Medgar was killed 61 years ago, what it took ultimately was the bravery of who? Judges. Judges in federal district courts crafting and enforcing desegregation orders, like William Cady in Mississippi and Frank Johnson in Alabama. Judges in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, like John Minor Wisdom, Elbert Tuttle, who affirmed district judges who did the right thing and required others, like Harold Cox, to follow the law. And yes, the Supreme Court justices who issued Alexander versus Holmes, the 1969 decision, the case that I call Brown 3. that turned all deliberate speed into an immediate obligation to desegregate. All those judges were heroes, not because they had a new, bold idea of integration, not even because they believed in the idea. Many of them did not. No, those judges were heroes for seeing beyond the prejudice that they were steeped in to the truths articulated by the parties before them. They were heroes for bearing the hatred of their friends, their neighbors, their relatives, their fellow church members, to deliver justice their fellow citizens would not secure at the ballot box. They were heroes because they accepted the fact, the absolute fact, that our Constitution was rewritten by radicals through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. They were heroes because America needed fixing. And they did what was necessary to fix her, to make our country more perfect. So when I say judges are heroes, and when I say anyone can be a hero, that is what I mean. I'm serious about it. That is what I believe. I'm serious about it. You do not become a hero by being the smartest, the most credentialed, or the best and the brightest. In a democracy, heroes are not those who stand above others. Heroes are those who stand with the people. Who fight alongside the people, who stand up and fight for the others, who are of, by, and for the people. So when naysayers dismiss Brown, when they call it extravagant, when they refuse to say it was rightly decided, they are not criticizing the power of people in robes. They are desecrating the memories of Mr. Nathan Stewart, Mr. James Wright, and my Miss Lottie Mae Tubbs. They're dismissing that little girl, Ruby Bridges, in New Orleans, and the teenagers like Ernest Green and Minnie Jean Brown and Terrence Roberts over there in Little Rock. They are closing their eyes and ears to the angry faces and the screams that little Ruby saw every day walking to school. They're dishonoring the everyday people who risked everything in the struggle for justice, the people who participated in the marches and the sit-ins long after the organizers moved on to the next town. And they're forgetting what ordinary Americans fought for. Not prestige, not power, but people. People like me. You see, the Supreme Court decided Alexander versus Holmes when I was in kindergarten. The next year, I became part of the first integrated elementary school class in Yazoo City. I spent the next 12 years learning alongside black and white children with Maxine and Melanie, Don and Thomas, Leaf and Charles, Phyllis and Joy, Mike and Carlton, who happened to be born on the exact same day, and every other member of the class of 1982, whose graduation song was Stevie Wonder's and Paul McCartney's classic. Ebony and Ivory live together in perfect harmony. Why don't we? So when we crossed that stage to get our diplomas, we were walking on a path cleared for us by so many, by judges, by lawyers, by activists, by agitators, by organizers, and all the regular folk who spent their lives fighting for what? Fighting for democracy. So our graduation was the victory that Mr. Stewart, Mr. Wright, and my Miss Lottie Mae sacrificed so much for. But it was not their only victory. Remember that leader of the mob that I told you about, the Mr. Barber? President Reagan appointed his son, William, to a seat on the federal bench in Mississippi. And when President Obama had the chance to fill William's vacant seat, he chose another son of Yazoo City. He chose the boy who sang in the youth choir with Miss Lottie Mae's daughter. He chose somebody from 9th Street, West 9th Street. He chose somebody that everybody in Yazoo City knows as Baby. He chose me. So remember that when you face the trials and tribulations before you, when you want to give up, when you don't know where to go next, remember what you're fighting for. Not for an honor, a title, a thank you, or even a victory that you might live to see. You're fighting for children who one day will grow up in a democracy made more perfect because of you. So never forget who you can be, who you must be. The next Thurgood Marshall might be in this room. The next Constance Baker Motley is sitting right over there, next to Lonnie Guinier. I see you, Julius Waring and Ruth Gator Binsberg. I see you. I see you too, Julius Chambers. I see you. You are in Anita Earls. I see you. In the corner back over there is Charles Ogletree, whispering to Paulie Murray. And here, I see Barry Rudston and Ella Baker and Sherilyn Eiffel and Brian Stevenson, right here in this room. But you'll become a hero only if you are bold. You can become a hero only if you do not give up. You will become a hero only if you push and prod and scrap and fight and study and struggle. Only if you join with your neighbors to sign your own petition, your own affront to the powerful, sign your own pledge to make our America more perfect. That's how you become a hero. That's what you should embark on. And you should continue on that never-ending journey to realize the promise of Brown. So remember this. You have the key. You have the power. Go be bold. Be courageous. And go do justice. God bless each of you. God bless the ACS, and may she live forever.
Please welcome to the stage the chair of the ACS National Board of Directors and incoming dean of Drake University Law School, Roscoe Jones, Jr.
Man, I got to follow that. Woo, I'm still trying to get over that one. Judge, you're a bad man, I tell you. I want to quickly just go off script one moment and just kind of follow up on the judge's remarks, because this notion about democracy has really inspired me, because we were thinking about Normandy. And one thing that wasn't mentioned about me is that I'm actually from Meridian, Mississippi. I'm home in the South. This is where I was born. And I think back about another young African American who was also born in Mississippi in 1925, who had to walk 12 miles just to attend a segregated school, who signed up for the military to serve his country even when his country wouldn't even serve him a cup of coffee, who at 18 years old wound up on the beaches of Normandy fighting for democracy, survived the beaches of Normandy, only to come back home to Mississippi and couldn't even go to a movie theater, who at 26 would become an organizer, who would organize actions to end segregation, who would organize boycotts of gas stations that denied African Americans the use of restrooms, who at 30, at the age of 30, after the Brown v. Board of Education decision, he applied to attend his state law school, the University of Mississippi. He was rejected on the basis of his color, who at 31 would then take when another 14-year-old boy in Mississippi was lynched. He was the one who went undercover and organized to investigate what actually happened, who at 37 would come home from work one day while his 3 kids were in the house and end up getting shot in front of his kids by a white supremacist. This man lived less than 4 decades on this earth. This man would go on to mentor a young 14-year-old boy who would later go on to march across the bridge of Selma, who would later go on to work at Freedom Summer of 1964, who would later go on to have a son who would go to Stanford and UVA and become a black dean. That man was my father. The man I'm talking about before that was Medgar Evers. When we talk about anybody can make a difference, think about what we have today that they didn't have during the bus boycotts. You know, they didn't have cell phones or Facebook or Twitter, and yet they were able to organize. These weren't people who were my age. My father was 17 years old when he was involved in the Freedom Summer. Many of his friends were 18, 19, 20 years old. They were the age of everybody in this room. Our democracy was built on the hands of young people. And the young people in this room today will continue to change our democracy. I want to take a moment just to congratulate all of our award winners. And in a moment when our democracy is so imperiled, it is wonderful that we've got the Black Vote Matters. We need Black Vote Matters, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. At a moment where we are trying to strengthen our democracy, when we need the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg, people like Miriam Siefter are showing us the path forward with thought leadership and scholarship and helping us to think about the next battles that lie ahead. When we need people who are mentoring and standing up for our young people and showing them the way, we have people like Fred Giddicks here. When we need young people and student leaders, we've got student leaders all throughout this room who are changing their campuses and law schools all over the country. And we celebrate and honor each and every one of you. Let me just say I'm going to let y'all go because I know there's a lot more stuff going on, but I just want to send a quick shout out to my man, Russ Feingold. I want to thank Russ for his leadership of the American Constitution Society and helping to shape our vision of a progressive legal movement. Russ, you are also one bad man. Since joining ACS, Russ has been dedicated to supporting our chapters and our members and positioning the organization to be on the front lines of the most progressive legal and institutional challenges of our time. I won't go through his resume, but it's just absolutely phenomenal. And I will say that we are so proud of all the public service that you have given to your country, to your nation, in so many different capacities. The state of Wisconsin salutes you, but everybody in this room tonight salutes you too. And lastly, I would just want to say to everybody in this room, we are only getting started. We have much more work to do. We have another full day of inspiring speakers and events and thought leadership. And I'll just close by telling you, I've been able to do a lot of things in my life. I've been a civil rights lawyer, a federal prosecutor, working with 3 U.S. senators and a member of Congress, teaching law students at Harvard and Yale and Michigan, Chicago, and now the Drake Law School as the dean. But what inspired me, what got me started, was being in your shoes in this room. Coming to ACS when I was in law school and we were just getting started, seeing all the wonderful, inspirational things that people were doing all over this country. I know what it's like to go to a school and you feel like, man, I don't know if everybody in this law school looks like me. I don't know if everybody in this law school believes in what I believe. I don't know if the things that I want to do are different than just going the law firm route. I want to change the world. But I came to ACS and I was surrounded by a common village, a village of people who believed in the things that I believed, who believed that we were only getting started in making this union more perfect. Thank you for everything that you have done, and thank you for the actions you will do. Have a great evening.